Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special edition of This Just In Radio. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. Today, we're broadcasting live from the Health 2024 in sunny Las Vegas. For today, I have a fantastic lineup of CEOs, CIOs, care providers, policy leaders, and visionaries. As many of you know, my goal for broadcasting live each year from these key conferences is to create an information medium that shares best practices, strategies, and actionable intelligence from the industry's leading sources and experts. My goal, along with all my guests here, will be to offer tactics and strategies to not only survive, but to thrive as you navigate your hospital, your physician practice, your company, or even your family through all of these changes occurring across healthcare. There's more opportunity than ever before for all of us to thrive, but we must understand how healthcare is evolving, how policy and reimbursement is shifting, and where best practices and innovation can support our efforts. I hope you glean all of that over the next few days. That's at least my goal. And welcome back to This Just In Radio Show, broadcasting live from Las Vegas. My next guest is Tony Nunes, Senior Manager, Healthcare and Life Sciences from AMD. Welcome back to the show, my good friend.
I am always happy to be here, Justin. I'll tell you what, it's always an exciting day when I can do your show.
I love it. Getting used to it. Thoroughly enjoy it. So you just got in. Obviously, I know it's been a busy week for you, but great to for you to be here and to see you now. And glad you made it safely.
It has. I'll tell you what. I've been in this business for 30 years, and the excitement around technology and its impact on patient care has never been higher. The buzz is enormous. I spent the last 2 weeks traveling through Europe and meeting with different user groups and different customers, and I'll tell you what, there's a palpable excitement for the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, yeah, I feel that here on health. I've been here for 36 hours now, and the electricity, the excitement, the energy, and even really cool, the innovation.
Very true. Very true.
Is all around us, and 12,000 of us here. I'm having a fantastic time.
It's amazing how fast this show has grown.
I know.
I mean, in the last couple of years.
5 years. I think you're 5 or 6, 7 years old now.
Yeah.
But every year it's growing by a couple thousand people.
Yeah.
So I think a little over 12,000 now. So I always love this question. Start off on a very positive note. What progress are you most excited to see occurring in healthcare today?
Oh, let me tell you. There's so many things I could talk about. But if pressed, it's the ability to personalize my personal medicine. And that's kind of a mouthful.
Yep.
Let me explain. We have the ability inside of, I think, within 5 years of having our own personal physician assistant that we can interact with, that knows our medical background, knows what we need, knows the tests that we have to take, and is able to become an entry point into the greater healthcare system, and alleviates a lot of the grunt work that we see currently in the workflows of most interactions, and be able to automate that. One, it'll be better for the patients, but also be better for the care providers.
Absolutely.
As a lot of this becomes automated.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. We've been talking about that over the last couple of weeks as well, a little bit offline. Love it. And I'm starting to see some of that too. So even what you kind of projected here, a couple of months ago when we first brought up that topic, I started to see that here, certainly from the top tracks here at Health, but then also even some of the innovations around, what really AI means. Now we're starting to see what's really exciting, and you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. We were at a conference in Atlanta, the HIMSS annual conference there for the Georgia HIMSS, and you brought up this point, and there we're starting to see where these innovations are actually taking hold. We're actually using, AI is actually integrating itself into our care plans, our care workflows. It is bringing these type of innovations to market. So it's exciting to see for sure. It's still in its infancy. But I think what we came out a couple weeks ago was we're excited to see where AI is making a difference today. It's no longer in the future. It is here and now.
Oh, exactly. So. Exactly. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of work going on underneath the surface.
Yes.
That's not necessarily visible. If you talk to any of the major electronic medical record providers, Meditech, Cerner, Epic, etc., what they're all planning on doing is making use of their greatest asset, which is the patients that they serve and the interactions that they've registered inside their database. And all of them are trying to find ways to be able to capitalize on that asset and use it in a way that allows them to start personalizing the access to the patients that are using those EMRs.
Love it. Absolutely. So what trends, either healthcare or digital health trends, are you seeing in the industry today?
Well, first is the collection of data. And that started more than 10 years ago, okay, with personalized wearable devices, et cetera. But it's one thing to collect it. It's another thing to interpret it. And the real value of generative AI is not creating something that's different, but using what's already there and rapidly coming up to conclusions that would normally take a large amount of time, a large amount of staff to do.
Right.
That's the real difference. And all that information exists. We've been collecting it for decades and decades and decades, whether it's medical imaging, whether it's electronic health record information, it's all there. Question now is, how can I start looking for patterns? How can I start comparing information that I need against a cohort that looks like me and be able to come to meaningful actions that can be taken from that? And then this doesn't replace physicians, obviously. That's always the fear.
Yes.
That's not going to happen. But this is going to make the work of those physicians that much better by being able to take away a lot of that grunt work within the workflow and automating it completely.
Yeah, and I think one thing that even Rasu, a good friend of the show, he'll be coming up here in a bit too, spoke about just yesterday. AI is going to actually bring personalization, so it's actually going to bring the heart kind of back into healthcare. It's going to humanize healthcare in a lot of ways because it's going to become so personal.
Oh, for sure.
So it's kind of people. It's not cold. It's not on the outside. It's actually
sure.
on the inside. That's exciting.
In a lot of ways, this is already there. What's not there is the personalized interaction, and that's still a little ways off. But if you walk around the show, you're going to see some astounding visualizations of digital human interactions. So let's take, for example, New York City. New York City, the population speaks probably over 27 different languages at any given point within New York itself. To be able to effectively treat that diverse population requires being able to speak in their language. Hiring translators at the cost of millions upon millions of dollars a year is not practical. You can teach an AI program to learn any language,
yes,
written and very soon even spoken, to improve the interaction between patient and their care providers. And a lot of the issues in treating populations have been adherence to protocols, adherence to what's required, and very often it's because they don't understand it. This bridges that gap, and it's critical. That's one use case, and I think you'll see that rapidly being adopted over the next 2 years, 2.5 years or so.
Yep, I completely agree. And actually, one of the companies I met last night does a little bit of that in the mental health space, and they can do it in all these different languages. Obviously, starting off in English here in the U.S., but yeah, the energy and excitement building for that to be able to bring these types of personalized care in 30 languages, 50 languages, however many it is, to service the population in a community.
Exactly. Once someone can understand actually what's required for them to do for their own health, it becomes personal to them at that point.
Absolutely.
And the adherence to the protocols that they're being given becomes that much greater. And I think the payback is enormous. So
going back to one of your initial trends that you spoke about, what best practice or what key strategies do you offer to people? Say, hey, this is how you can go about solving that problem.
So adopting AI, which is what everyone is talking about, requires a certain categorical change in how you view IT. And you have to start from a foundational basis on what do I need to do to make sure my data center is using as standard an approach as possible, is able to be flexible enough to adopt some of this new technology, and maybe I can incorporate public cloud or some sort of hosted platform to be able to do this in addition to what I've got. But you've got to start with a certain foundation. That foundation has to give you the right level of performance, has to give you the right cost capabilities if you adopt it. So did you read a couple of weeks ago that Microsoft is partnering or either buying 3 Mile Island? I forget which.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
And the reason they're doing it is because the demand for power that generated by AI is so great that they've got to get their own power source. Well, if we look at the individual data center in a hospital, adopting AI isn't as simple as going out and buying some servers and doing it. It requires an awful lot of power, and it requires a space, and it requires the capability to be able to fit it into what I've already got. So, as a foundational technology, you got to be able to do the same level of performance with fewer numbers of servers. And thankfully, my own company is working on this better than anybody I know, in being able to create the foundation to give you that level of performance, to give you the security built into the chip itself, to give you the capabilities of being able to consolidate, in some cases 7 to 1 or more, into the data center to make room for AI. And that's going to be key. You've got to start with the foundation. And people don't necessarily think of it this way, but I think the best CIOs out there are absolutely mapping it out on this basis.
Absolutely true. So thinking beyond today is kind of my favorite question. What do we need to be ready for to navigate in 2 or 3 years from now? I know there's a lot in healthcare, and we evolve sometimes quickly, and sometimes we don't evolve as quickly, but what do we have to be ready for in a couple of years from now?
It started many years ago, but non-keyboard interactions. So voice interactions, visual interactions, the ability to capture emotions in characteristics in the way people walk and the way people talk, and to create a response back in some form. That data is being collected, and then there's privacy concerns that go along with this, and they're legitimate and need to be discussed. But by and large, this is going to happen. So the interaction between you and the system is going to fundamentally change, and it's either going to be through natural language voice, it's going to be through gestures, it's going to be through interactive visual analysis of the system and you. And this is, I when I had older parents that I was taking care of, very often the way they would walk, the way they would slur would be an indication that something else is going on.
You got it.
And that requires someone to watch them all the time. Yeah. But what we're going to see fundamentally change is that as they interact with some sort of mechanism with their doctor, those characteristics are being captured and automatically developing some sort of iterative action because of that. And that's what we're going to see.
I love it. Completely agree. And actually, again, one of the receptions that I went to last night, someone was talking about this AI feature, I guess they have, or function, where it actually does, it learns the motions of your face, the motions of your eyes, the motions of your lips. It reads your mood. And then it gets smarter and smarter. Yeah. It's more on the mental health side. But so exactly right. What you're talking about is absolutely on the way.
I hadn't even gone down that road, which unfortunately is an enormous issue that we're dealing with since the last 4 years. If you look at the stats, even with young people, and young people consume, digital media, digital interactions more than any other generation, and they're also suffering from the largest amount of unfortunately emotional issues.
Absolutely.
As a result of many things. Being able to connect with them where they are is going to be a key factor in being able to bridge the gap for treatment.
Absolutely agree. Tony Nunes, AMD, thank you for joining me as always, my friend.
My pleasure, my friend. Always happy to be here. Thank you.
Got it. We'll see you soon. So my next guest is Nick Patel, founder and CEO of Stealth Consulting. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Great to be here, Justin.
It's great to have you. So I assume it's been an amazing few days already for you?
Yeah, it's been busy. Back-to-back meetings, networking, great events.
So what's your goal? Before we dive into all the good questions, what's your goal for being here?
Yeah, one is to meet some of the clients that I work with, both on the PE side as well as health system and health tech, see how things are going and where connections need to be made. But also kind of look at what the trends are. What's the theme kind of overall at health this year?
Yep. So my first question is always kind of a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most exciting aspect and progress that you've seen in healthcare today?
Yeah, one of the best things that I've seen happen is better collaboration between the tech companies that are out there.
I've heard that a lot. I totally agree with you. It's awesome.
It's something that we have to realize. And I'm a physician. I practiced for 22 years and ran a large digital program at Prisma Health, largest health system in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of siloed solutions out there. And we need to be able to kind of daisy chain the right applications together from, the front door to the side door to the consumer engagement piece of this.
Yeah, you're spot on. Like I said, my show, I broadcast from another show conference about a month ago, and that was a resounding theme about how we have much more collaboration than ever before. And then ironically, at breakfast this morning, I sit across from a lady, she's like, what is her first health conference? She's like, what's kind of like, what's an inside track that you could give me, or best advice you could give me? I said, look for systems that aren't siloed in any way. Basically, look for things that are integrated. It's got to be integrated with the care strategy, the care flow, everything, technology, interoperability. You can't have these systems that are disparate in any way because that does not fly. You can't scale it. So
it's kind of going back to basics, really, honestly. You got to focus on the use case. As a physician leader, I never looked at the tech. I love technology, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of stuff that's in this room, right, in this show, and you have to try to be prudent about your decisions. You have to be very pragmatic as well on what are the problems you're trying to solve with this technology.
So what are a few trends that you've seen out there, healthcare, digital health trends in the industry right now?
Well, again, a lot of health systems going back to basics. We have a major staffing shortage in healthcare, and that's due to many things. One, early retirement, burnout, people, deciding that they want to reduce their hours. So one of the biggest trends that I'm seeing is how do we use artificial intelligence, automation in combination to do some of the mundane tasks that nurses and doctors do day in and day out? And then how do we get the right data insights to surface up risky patients where we need to double down and make sure care coordination, pharmacists, and other people can be activated to take care of those folks. So I'm seeing a lot of that right now because we have a huge problem in America right now when it comes to healthcare staffing.
We do, absolutely do. So I guess one thing that came out in the last live broadcast that I did was AI is no longer, its future is always going to grow, but it's actually here today. It's here in a care delivery. It's happening, with patients today and certainly with providers as they look to augment some of their care strategies. What are you seeing specifically that you're excited about with AI? What's happening? I mean, again, you talk about some staffing assistance, but what are your thoughts there?
Look, again, being very pragmatic, like AI has a lot of promise in many different verticals, but right now, people need to be focused about how AI can help with throughput and staffing, so documentation, computer vision for early detection of cancers. And so those are the types of things. But again, AI without being tagged to some sort of automation to actually take care of a task is really going to add even more burden to staff. And I think the other things we have to understand is we have to be clear to our staff that AI is not going to replace your job. Right. And don't be threatened by it. You saw Kaiser Permanente's nurses went on strike over this. And we also understand that AI cannot make the final decision. A provider has to be part of decision making because we're just not there to trust what he can do.
Absolutely. So looking out, what are a few best practices, 2 or 3 best practices or strategies to help people navigate the trends that you speak about?
Yeah, one, again, start with the enterprise in mind. Don't try to do silo projects within one clinic, one hospital. Look at the enterprise, because I can promise you, when you look at the needs of 30-day readmission rates, length of stay, staffing issues, cost of care, right? 37 to 40% of all healthcare costs happen in the hospital. Well, the whole trend is supposed to move to the ambulatory side, right? Yes. So focus on what's going to help with those numbers, number one. 2, make sure you don't also in the silo do something in IT alone. Make sure the clinical enterprise is incorporated into the decision making and choosing the tool, the workflows, and try to standardize. Don't set up separate, disparate workflows at each place. Try to look at something holistically and again, avoid those silos. That's the key.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom there. So what do you think, I guess, kind of my final question, then we'll dive in a little deeper in some areas. What do you think we need to be ready to navigate in a couple of years from now? I know it's a big question. I know we evolve quickly some ways, and sometimes we don't evolve as quickly. What do you think about the future? What do we need to be ready to navigate in a couple of years from now that we may not be thinking about today?
Well, one of the biggest things that scares me is the aging population. I just don't think, again, with the staffing shortage and the fact that people are living longer, which is great, right? That these are advancements that have happened in life sciences and healthcare in general that allow for this, but who's going to take care of those folks, right? And how are we going to interact with these folks and make sure we're proactive in getting alerted when someone is getting into trouble? Because the current health system, it's over $4 or $5 trillion in spend, right? A larger part of GDP cannot be sustained. And I think there's people from the federal and state level that need to work with health systems to try to solve for this, because We've got a lot of tsunamis occurring. One of them is then the payment reform and the reimbursement keeps getting lower.
Right.
So your dollar is going to be stretched even further. Two is, again, the continued issues with staffing. Third is the fact that we're going to have a lot of leaders in the C-suite retire, right? So we're going to see a massive shift in that leadership structure. Most leadership right now, 65 or older, average, right? They're going to retire. I already see this happening at a lot of places I work.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see a new sort of generational leader coming into healthcare, and that's going to fundamentally change the direction we go from the old guard to the new.
Wow. I completely agree with that, and I've not spoken about that, and I've not heard that, but I actually see it. We read about it almost every single day, and in the Beckers, whatever,
Right.
news journals that you read every single day talk about the change here, the guard, and I completely agree with there. Let's dive into maybe some solutions, because what would you tell? I mean, you advise the health system today.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them, knowing what's coming on? I agree with everything you said. I mean, payment reform. I've been working payment reform since 06, 05, 06, because
Right.
we saw with the SGR, the formulas, but now, if you don't find ways to augment your, certainly as a outpatient provider, you got to find ways to augment, your payment structure. So
Right.
you got some type of chronic care management payments or some of value-based care,
Right.
because you just don't want those cuts, and they're on the horizon. I think they're not as quite as large as this year's cuts, but every single year there's a small cut.
Yep.
So can you imagine if all of we're not looking at payment, aren't looking at payment cuts in 2026, 2025, 2026,
Right.
like physicians are. So they got to change how they're providing care
Right.
and look at these new models to absolutely bring in additional revenue.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking, I think you mainly work with health systems. So what would you say to a health system? Hey, we're looking at a 3-year plan. And we discussed some things here, but what would you tell that C-suite and see to be ready for?
It's interesting that that shift that's happening is moving from acute to ambulatory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are still too focused on acute care. Again, 40% of the total spend of that $4 trillion. And so we need to be focused on the ambulatory side, primary care. And if you look at CMS, right, who's really led the charge of this, reimbursements for specialty have shrunk.
Right.
Reimbursement for primary has grown.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? And so that helps us in a couple of ways. One, we can pay that provider more to do it, right? There's also new sort of initiatives to reduce debt burden from folks, because a lot of people don't go to primary care because they don't pay as much as cardiology or orthopedic surgery, right? So I advise them to focus on the ambulatory, especially primary care side. But here's the problem. You can't hire fast enough in primary care. So you have to partner, right? There's companies out there that do virtual primary care. There's many here already, but you have to be able to scale. There's certain things that you can do virtually, right? Transitional care, checking in the patient, chronic care management,
Absolutely.
annual wellness visits. So we're leaving a lot of money on the table. And some of these have economies of scale. Like, for example, annual wellness visits. Not only are you helping someone with their wellness, but you're also closing care gaps, which those care gaps, like colonoscopies, mammograms, DEXA scans, whatever, those are downstream revenue for the health systems that you're leaving on the table. Then there's another one. If that person is part of an attributable population of value base, now you're getting quality dollars on top of that because you are actually closing their care gaps. So I try to look at it and what's the force multiplier and the flywheel around this. And when you look at it, there's those 3-letter acronyms, CCMs, TCMs, all those types of things, RPM, you need to be doing that.
Yeah, there's a lot of money on the acute side, but also the ambulatory side as well. You need to be taking that very seriously.
100%.
I actually I just did a thought leadership piece on that specifically in cardiology, but what it means to primary care in general, not just cardiologists, because I'm trying to encourage primary care physicians, even family docs, can participate in a lot of that on the cardiology side, even though they may not be a cardiologist, but also cardiologists can do the PCM payment, so if they're going to provide the principal care, and they don't have a family physician doing that for their patients. So there's money on both sides
100%.
for these providers.
Interestingly enough, Justin, so I practice as a hospitalist and primary care, right? What we see is that we're referring out too much all the time. If you see a skin lesion, dermatology, well, that you shouldn't do that, right? There's a lot of things we should be doing ourselves as primary care. We need to educate up. That starts at the medical school to training and having the right tools to actually help people with that. For example, people refer out for dermatology all the time. There's a 6-month waiting list. You should be able to do that. We have technology that's in this room that actually can use computer vision to guide a person to say that's skin cancer and here's the steps you need to do to fix it, right? So I think we need to train up. The last thing I'll say to that is that is a big tsunami too, is mental health. There's not enough psychiatrists, psychologists, CBT folks out there to help. primary care has to take kind of the front seat in that and helping navigate people to care. And again, there's a lot of tools that are in this room that can help with AI mental health using CBT virtually, psychiatrists virtually, chatbots to help encourage and positive reinforcement. So we got to leverage it that way.
Yeah, completely agree. Like my reception last night, I had one of those innovators who kind of gave me their whole business plan. It was actually exciting to hear and see what they're doing on the mental health side specifically, because we know that's probably a growing epidemic that we aren't addressing effectively and efficiently as a country. Yep. So in the last couple of seconds, you live in South Carolina? Where do you live now?
I live in Columbia, South Carolina.
You do, as I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been in South Carolina for over 40 years.
Excellent. Well, Nick Patel, great to have you on air. Actually, the first time you've actually joined the show, I believe. I've been trying to have you here. It's been crazy, but I'm glad it all worked out.
So. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome.
You got it, my friend. We'll do it again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good to see you. Well, that's a wrap. I just want to offer a note of gratitude to my dedicated partners of the weekly syndicated This Justin Radio Show and everyone that voted us 2024 Healthcare Podcast of the Year. Thank you so much to Roberta Mullen, my Healthcare Now radio producer, as she's been producing my shows and broadcasting my shows for almost 11 years now. Many thanks to my show supporters and partners, AMD and AWS, for all of their continued support, and certainly to Rich Scarfo and the entire health team for this opportunity to broadcast live each year from the health conferences, and this year from Health 24 in sunny Las Vegas. And a big thank you again to all of my listeners and all of my supporters. I'm grateful for all of you. It's always fun to do this. And please tune in as we broadcast these shows weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. As always, you can find me on my LinkedIn at Justin T. Barnes, or track me on Twitter at HLT Advisor and use the hashtag ThisJustinRadio so we can respond to your comments from the show. If you miss any of this broadcast and want to hear any of my shows, they're all posted at Amazon Music, YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spreaker, and on the TuneIn platforms. And also, you can check out some of the new content that we published on the Thought Leadership page at justinbarnes.com. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.